Hello, IB English students. Welcome to the IA outline for the Things They Carried prep video. This video is designed to help you understand what it is you need to do in a sequential order to complete your IA outline for the Things They Carried in the next few days. So first, taking a quick look at your new outline, which I'll go into more detail a little bit later. First, at the top, you'll notice I've added the section that basically says, restates, right? Everything needs to be Times New Roman, size 12. When this is completed, you're only supposed to have your 10 bullet points on one side of this sheet of paper. And to help you kind of reduce the extra space, you can just delete all of those directions when you get to the end. I'll talk to you later in this presentation about when is a good time to do that. You'll also notice that your opening script is there. I added this section in about, my IB candidate number. For now, we'll just leave that blank until, again, Mrs. Ursky gives that to us, but you should be able to fill in the other blanks as we go. You'll also notice that underneath your 10 bullet points, there's space for you to paste your 40-line excerpt from the Things They Carried, and then that nonfiction text that you intend to use as the second piece, and which I'll go over a little more of that later as well. Okay, so these are all the items that you need to do in order to kind of get that IA outline finished. Some of them are brainstorming and others are kind of like physical going, grabbing things, etc. I'm going to talk about each one of these in turn. So the first thing you need to do is select either a passage from the Things They Carried that you liked, that you would like to discuss, or select a global issue that you saw in the Things That They Carried that you want to discuss. We talked about how you kind of make that choice of how you want to begin. I will point out that you already did this second part where I asked you to kind of look for a global issue that you saw in the text at the very bottom of your DIRT prep sheet for the Things They Carried. So you may want to go there first and look at what you wrote and use that and move forward from there. Next, you're going to want to select the 40 lines from the text that you're going to use. When you figure that out, you're going to copy and paste those lines without formatting into the space provided in the outline. So you would highlight the part, underneath that says paste 40 lines excerpt here, and you would hit Control-Shift-V, and when it pastes, it should put it in Times New Roman size 12 font for you. If that doesn't work for whatever reason, don't worry, we can always go back and reformat it so that it will work, etc. at the very end. And I'll show you how to do that. But this, if you follow these directions, it should work correctly. Right? Don't just paste it normal like Control-V, because it'll copy the old formatting. You need to paste without formatting. Control-Shift-V. All right. Then you're going to want to take one of those 5 general global issues and narrow its focus to match the selected passage that you selected. I would suggest you let the excerpt itself kind of guide you, right? You should be able to find multiple clear pieces of evidence for your analysis of that global issue, right? It shouldn't just be, one piece of diction shows the global issue is present, or one, example of figurative language does it. You should be able to point to multiple things within that 40-line passage. So some examples of taking the broad general categories and then narrowing them to something that's a little easier to work with, right? So culture, identity, and community is too broad, but you could narrow your focus to how the cultural practice of arranged marriages impacts women. Another example, beliefs, values, and education is the broad topic. You might want to narrow it to how religious opposition to sex education, coupled with pressure from public school education requirements and peers, impacts young adults, right? Another example, politics, power, and justice is a broad topic, but the psychological effects of anti-immigration laws and policies on low-income immigrant families is a much narrower focus that still fits into that same global issue category. For art, creativity, and the imagination, I might narrow the focus to the perception and rejection of artists whose work deviates from the tropes typically associated with their text genre. And for science, technology, and the environment, I might narrow my focus to something more like the effects of constant surveillance on trust within a community. Okay. These are obviously not the only way that you can narrow these broad global issues. I just wanted to give you some kind of examples for each of those. And so the next thing that you need to do after you've narrowed your focus is I would suggest that you consult that approved nonfiction text list, which you have in week 3, day 1, right? That's the resource here that you see. Or alternately, you could do a word association or a free writing activity to help you generate ideas for where you're going to find that nonfiction text to couple with the excerpt from the things they carry. And so that free writing activity might look something like what I'm about to do with you now, or you could use any other free writing activity you may have done in another class to help you generate ideas. So for the one I'm going to use, I would say, without thinking, list the first 10 words that come to mind when you think about the passage from the things they carried that you selected, right? So grunt, military, Vietnam, young, etc., right? List all your 10 words. Then for each word on your list, try to give a cartoon, a TV show, a movie, a news story, something that you associate with that word, right? So next to, next to any one of the, like young, I might put down the name of like a cartoon that I saw before, or I might write down a news story that I remembered about someone, etc. So some of you, that might be enough. Like if you stop there and you find that, oh yeah, actually I can use this cartoon that I associated with this, etc., that's great. But for those of you who that doesn't give you an answer just yet, the next thing in that process, I would say, is identify like 5 to 7 key words from your brainstorming. And when we say keywords, I mean prioritize the words that directly relate to your chosen global issue. Okay. And if it helps, you can circle them or underline them or highlight them. And then take those 5 to 7 keywords and do Google searches for them, right? One at a time, coupled with an approved nonfiction text type that you'd like to work with. So for example, I could look for, I'll let that move out of the way. I could look for education, brainwashing, interview, right? Education is the topic, one of those keywords. Brainwashing is another one of my keywords. And then interview is the type of text I want to work with. Or I might do a search for technology, harmful diagram. Or I could do, my last example, value, poetry, parody, right? And so you can kind of put a whole bunch of those different combinations together and see what sort of hits you get on those. You also want to make sure that when you're doing those Google searches that you add words like international, global, if it applies, Asian, African, Middle Eastern, etc., to your search. Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, for the most part, focuses on American perspectives. So your second text will need to come from abroad, right? You're going to need to find like an interview with someone who's not an American, or a cartoon by someone who is not an American, etc. And so, again, you just would kind of add those things into your search terms, right? So education, brainwashing, Middle Eastern, interview, or technology, harmful, Asia, diagram, value, international, poetry, parody, etc. Right? Again, you're going to need to kind of play around with that a little bit. Okay. And so the next thing that you do, right, is you spend that time searching for your nonfiction text. I would suggest giving yourself some kind of a time limit, right? You need to do 3 things basically, right? You need to do your searching, you need to do your annotating, and then you need to actually write up the outline. And I would suggest you kind of think about, all right, this is due by this time, right before class on Monday. So it's due at this time. So I need to make sure that with my schedule, I have time set aside to just do the searching, time set aside to do just the annotating, and another set of time to actually fill out the outline. In general, the first thing that you find doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best thing for you to use, right? I would suggest maybe trying to come up with at least 3 options and then narrow it down from 3 to the one that you end up going with. But again, I don't settle for the absolute first thing that you find. I also would suggest that you try using the word association search on your family members to also generate ideas. Like they may think of something, like an international film that they saw before, or an interview on NPR that they heard, etc. Right. And so you might say, like, hey, mom, or hey, dad, or, to your brother or sister or whomever, your aunt, what do you think of when I say, education, brainwashing, interview? And they may surprise you, right? They may think of something that you could end up using yourself. So once you have found that nonfiction text and you're ready to go, it's time for you to annotate both of your texts, right? The excerpt from the things they carried, as well as that nonfiction text that you select. I would suggest that you go back and look at the week 3, day 1 resources where I showed you exactly how to annotate both the cartoon and a text from Stamped, right? And then from this week 5, day 1, there's also that the document that I put together about how to properly annotate your DIRT test for the things they carried. But all that stuff, all those points and highlights and tips, etc., about, definitions and examples of diction, imagery, details, language, and syntax, those are all also helpful. And you may want to look at those or revisit those as well, either before or during your annotation of your 2 texts that you select. And then the last thing that you need to do is make sure that you complete that 1-page IA outline. First, don't forget to paste your nonfiction text in the spot where that's supposed to go. And in the case of a cartoon, etc., you would just paste that in there and just do your best to kind of make sure that it's an appropriate size and pixelated in such a way that it's clear for me to see and for you to see, etc. And then, like we talked about earlier in this video, right, when you're actually ready to start filling in these 10 bullet points, that's when I would say you delete all these directions at the top. Again, everything is already in Times New Roman size 12. But if you get to the end and you want to be 100% sure, I would just suggest that you hit Control A to select everything, and then select the font Times New Roman and the size 12. And that'll change everything in the document to the standard size that we need. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please make sure that you email me by 5 p.m. on Sunday so that I can answer your question quick enough for you to be able to get your outline done in time for class. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to reading your outlines.